They came through the side doors of Whitmore Auditorium at 10:22 on a Saturday morning. 4 officers in uniform, moving fast enough to part the row of seated families on the aisle, and the one in front pointed at a woman in the third row of the graduating class and said, loud enough to carry over the organ music still fading from the processional, "Ma'am, we need you to come with us right now." The woman did not move immediately. She was wearing the black gown and flat mortarboard of Carrington University's class of 2024, a gold honor cord around her neck, and she was holding a printed program in both hands, the way you hold something when you have waited a long time for the moment printed on its cover. The officer said a name. It was not her name. She looked at the officer's face, and then at the 3 officers behind him, and then at the 2,200 people in that auditorium who had gone so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming in the ceiling. She said, "That's not my name." The officer said, "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." She said, "My name is on this program." She held up the program. The officer did not read the program. He was already reaching for her arm. And then, from the stage, a microphone clicked on, and a woman's voice said one word, "Constance." Just one word. And every officer on that floor stopped moving. What happened in the next 4 minutes was not something the Carrington University Police Department had a protocol for. But the woman in the graduation gown had been preparing, without knowing it, for that exact moment for 37 years. Her name was Nkechi Pauline Okafor, and she was 41 years old on the morning she sat in the third row of that auditorium, which was not the first time she had sat in a room where someone decided she did not belong there. She was 5'6", 158 pounds, and she had been carrying those pounds on a body that had worked 2 jobs for 11 of the last 14 years. The overnight cleaning shift at Meridian Office Park on Clemson Boulevard from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., and the cashier position at a grocery store on Washington Street from 6 a.m. to noon, so that she could pay the $6,200 per semester that Carrington University charged for its evening division, which was the only division that existed at a time she could attend. She had been enrolled for 7 years, 4 months, and 11 days. She had never dropped a class. She had never requested an extension. She had completed her final examination, a written comprehensive in applied sociology, on a Thursday night at 9:47 p.m., while sitting in the break room at Meridian between her 11 p.m. and 2:00 a.m. cleaning rotations, writing in longhand on a legal pad because her laptop battery had died and she had left her charger in her car. Parked 3 blocks away in a lot that charged $4 for overnight parking, which she had paid. She smelled of the cedar soap she used every morning, and faintly of the Fabuloso cleaning solution that had a way of staying in the fabric of anything it touched no matter how many times you washed it. She had noticed it on her clothes for so many years that she had stopped noticing it, which was its own kind of accommodation. The gown was a rental from the university bookstore, $35 deposit paid in January, receipt kept in the small envelope in the outside pocket of the green canvas tote at her feet. The tote was from a bookstore that had closed 3 years before, and it had a broken bottom left handle she had re-sewn herself with dental floss, because it was either that or a new bag and the tuition was due. Under the gown she wore a deep burgundy dress, with a flat collar, long-sleeved, pressed the previous night on the ironing board she had set up in the kitchen at 11:30 p.m. After her shift, the rest of the apartment dark, Simone asleep in the back room. The iron moving slowly across the burgundy fabric in the yellow kitchen light the way her mother had taught her to iron, thoroughly, without rushing, as though the cloth were something borrowed that needed to be returned in better condition than you found it. The tote bag at her feet held 1 extra pen, a folded printed map of the auditorium seating that she had studied the week before and did not need anymore, and a photograph of her daughter Simone. Simone was 7 years old and was currently sitting 7 rows back in the family section with her grandmother Adeze, who had boarded a Greyhound bus at the Raleigh terminal at 5:45 that morning because there was no version of this day she was going to miss from 300 miles away. Adeze Okafor was 68 years old, and she was wearing a blue lace blouse she had bought new for this occasion. The only new garment she had purchased in 2 years, and she smelled of the shea butter she had used every morning since before Nkechi was born, from a shop on East Innes Street in Salisbury that sold it in a blue tin with a yellow label. She had arrived at the auditorium at 9:10 a.m. and found the family section and settled Simone in the seat beside her and placed one hand on her granddaughter's knee, where it would remain for the next 2 hours. She had brought a Sony CyberShot camera she had owned since 2011, its battery cover cracked and held shut with a rubber band, because she had said to Nkechi 2 weeks prior that phone pictures looked like phone pictures, and this was not a phone picture kind of day. She had charged the camera the night before and checked the battery twice that morning. She was ready. What Nkechi had done to earn the gold honor cord around her neck was finish her degree with a cumulative GPA of 3.91 across 47 completed credit hours in the Department of Sociology and Human Services, while cleaning office parks at night and ringing groceries in the morning and raising a child who had never once in 7 years been sent to school without a hot breakfast. The cord was not a decoration. It was a record. The reason 4 police officers walked through the side doors of Whitmore Auditorium at 10:22 a.m. requires a different kind of record. 3 weeks before graduation, a woman named Marcella Hutchins had been served with an outstanding warrant for theft of services. She had walked out on $1.847 in fees at a medical billing office on Grover Street, and the office had pressed charges after 14 months of unanswered certified letters. Marcella Hutchins was 39 years old, 5'5", and had been briefly enrolled in Carrington University's day division before withdrawing in her second semester. She was not graduating. She was not at Whitmore Auditorium that morning. A patrol officer named Hollis, working from a printed warrant and a physical description he had not verified against current enrollment photographs, had entered the building looking for a black woman between 35 and 42 years of age, approximately 5'5" to 5'7". That description applied to 31 women in the graduating class of Carrington University that morning. Officer Hollis had walked to the third row. He had not read the program. He had read what he thought he saw. In the lobby outside the main doors, a woman named Margaret Kwanzaa had been arranging the faculty reception table when the 4 officers came through the security entrance at 10:19 a.m. Margaret was the university registrar. She had worked in that office for 16 years, and she had seen, in those 16 years, every kind of administrative problem a university could generate: enrollment disputes, transcript fraud, financial holds, missing grades, misplaced diplomas. She had never seen 4 officers enter a graduation ceremony building with that particular quality of purpose in their stride. She looked at their faces, and she looked at the door to the auditorium, and she turned and walked quickly to the facilities desk behind the registration table and asked the clerk there to log her into the registrar's portal. She pulled up Nkechi Pauline Okafor's enrollment record. She pressed print. The printer was 12 feet away. She walked to it, collected the sheet while it was still warm, and turned toward the auditorium. She did not run. She moved the way someone moves when they have a very clear idea of where they need to be and exactly how much time they have to get there. She arrived at the doors to the main hall at 10:21. Through the window in the door, she could already see Officer Hollis moving down the third row aisle toward the graduating students. She pushed through the door. The woman at the microphone on the stage when all of this was happening was Dr. Constance Yeboah Mensah, Dean of the College of Social Sciences at Carrington University. She was 56 years old, Nigerian Ghanaian, and had been dean for 11 years. She had the particular quality of presence that her faculty described in several different ways. Some said precision, some said stillness. One junior professor had once said, in a department meeting, that talking to Dr. Yeboah Mensah when she had already formed a view was like arguing with architecture. She had been born in the Ashanti region of Ghana and had arrived in the United States in 1988 on a student visa with $200 and the address of a cousin in Maryland, and she had spent the 36 years since building a degree, then a doctorate, then a research position, then a professorship, then a deanship, with the specific patience of a person who understood that the only way to build something permanent was to build it in the sequence it actually required, not in the sequence you wished it did. She was standing at the podium because she was the one who read the names. She had always been the one who read the names. She had been about to read Nkechi Pauline Okafor's name when the officers came through the side doors. She watched Officer Hollis walk to the third row. She watched the exchange she could not fully hear but could entirely read. She watched the program held up. She watched the arm reach. She had been holding the stack of name cards in both hands, and she set them down on the podium and leaned forward to the microphone and said the one word, her own name, Constance, not Nkechi's. Because in the fraction of a second, she had to decide what word to use. She chose the word that would make 4 officers look at a stage and see authority before she told them what to do with it. All 4 officers looked up. The auditorium had already gone quiet. The 2,200 people in those seats had been quiet since the officers walked in. But it was a different quality of quiet now. Attentive. Held. The way a room goes still when it understands that it is watching something that will matter. If you can feel where this is going, stay with me, because what the dean says in the next 2 minutes changes the shape of what already happened. Dr. Yeboah Mensah placed both hands on the sides of the podium. She did not grip it. She rested them there the way a person rests their hands on a surface they own. She looked at Officer Hollis, who was standing in the third row still looking up at her, and she said, in a voice that reached the upper gallery without effort, "This is a proceeding of Carrington University. The individual you have approached is a student of this university in good standing, currently enrolled in the class graduating today, and she is here under this institution's authority and at my personal invitation. If you have a warrant, I need to see it. If the name on that warrant matches the name in my program, I will assist you immediately. If it does not, I need you to return to the perimeter of this hall." She paused for 2 seconds. "The name in my program is Nkechi Pauline Okafor. Would you like me to read it again?" Officer Hollis stood in the third row, with 2,200 people watching him, and said nothing for 4 seconds. Then he said, "We need to verify." Dr. Yeboah Mensah said, "Then verify." "She is not going anywhere. She graduates today." She did not say it with heat. She said it the way a person states a thing that has already been decided. Officer Hollis did not move immediately toward the stage steps. He stood in the third row for a moment longer than was comfortable, and in that moment, Nkechi Pauline Okafor was sitting 12 inches from him, holding the graduation program with both hands. And the 12 inches between them contained a specific quality of silence that everyone in the surrounding rows understood without having to be told. The woman in the seat to Nkechi's left, a woman named Patricia, a nursing graduate who had heard the whole exchange and had not looked away from it, turned her body very slightly, so that her shoulder was between Nkechi and the officer's arm. She did not say anything. She just turned her shoulder. That was the thing she could do, and she did it. In the family section, Adaeze Okafor had risen halfway from her seat, the Sony Cybershot still at eye level, and Simone was gripping her grandmother's arm with both hands and watching with the wide-eyed focus of a child who is not yet afraid because her grandmother is not afraid. And Adaeze was not afraid. She was present. There is a difference. She had been afraid on other mornings, in other rooms where authority moved toward her daughter, and what she had learned from those mornings was that the fear was not useful, and the witnessing was. She held the camera steady. She let it see everything. A security guard named Duane, stationed at the rear entrance of the auditorium, had been watching the situation from the back of the hall since 10:22 and had not moved. He had a radio and he had not used it. He was watching the stage and watching Officer Hollis, and he was doing the calculation that security guards in institutional settings learn to do. The calculation of whose authority sits where in the room and what the cost of a mistake in either direction looks like. He had not moved. He was watching Dr. Yeboah Mensah with an expression that, if you had been standing next to him, you might have read as relief. The thing that nearly undid all of it came from Officer Hollis's partner, the second officer, the one who had been standing 2 steps behind Hollis the entire time. His name was Crawford. He was younger than Hollis by about 8 years, and he had not yet learned the particular discipline of stopping when the room's authority has shifted past the point of recovery. He said, to no one in particular and too loudly, she could be using an alias. He said it the way a person says something when they are trying to recover a position they have already lost, and the auditorium heard it. 2,200 people heard it. Nkechi heard it. Her jaw did not move. Her hands on the program did not tighten. She had been the person in the room who needed to explain herself so many times, in so many rooms, that she had long since developed the specific stillness of someone who knows that the only thing their composure can cost the other person is their own credibility. Dr. Yeboah Mensah looked at Officer Crawford for 2 seconds. She said, "The registrar's record contains her student ID photograph, taken at enrollment, matched against her face in this room. If you would like to examine it directly, you may come to the stage." She paused. "Otherwise, this proceeding resumes in approximately 90 seconds. Crawford said nothing. He looked at Hollis. Hollis looked at the floor. Margaret Kwanzaa was at the stage steps when that exchange ended. She climbed them without being asked. She walked across the stage and placed the printed enrollment verification on the podium beside the name cards. The sheet had Nkechi's student photograph in the upper left corner, her full legal name, her degree program, her GPA, and her graduation date. Margaret had included the GPA because she thought it was relevant. She had been right. Dr. Yeboah Mensah looked at the document. She did not hold it up theatrically or read from it. She simply placed it on the lectern where it was visible from the floor, and looked at Officer Hollis again and said, "Her photograph is on this document. The name is Nkechi Pauline Okafor. The warrant you are carrying has a different name on it." This was not a question. It was a statement of 2 facts, offered in the same register one might use to clarify a bus schedule. Officer Hollis took the warrant from his jacket. He looked at the photograph on the enrollment verification. He looked at the woman in the 3rd row. He looked at the warrant. He looked again at the photograph. He put the warrant back in his jacket. He said something to the 3 officers behind him in a voice too low to carry. Then he said to the row and to the room, "We apologize for the disruption." He walked toward the side doors. The 3 officers followed. The door swung shut behind them. Not slowly, not dramatically, just shut, the way a door shuts when the people on the wrong side of it leave. The silence held for 3 seconds after the door closed. Then someone in the family section began clapping. Then a row. Then the entire gallery. The graduating class turned in their seats. Nkechi Pauline Okafor sat very still for a moment in the 3rd row, with the program in her hands. She looked at the program. She pressed it flat against her gown with both palms, feeling the warmth of the paper, the weight of the fold. Then she straightened in her chair. She did not look at the gallery. She looked at the stage. The ceremony resumed at 10:34 a.m. Dr. Yeboah Mensah returned to the podium, set the enrollment verification to one side, and picked up her name cards. She did not address what had happened. She began where she had paused, in the F section of the Sociology and Human Services graduates, and she read 37 names before she arrived at the O's. "Nkechi Pauline Okafor," she said. Then, departing from the script she had used for 11 graduation ceremonies, she said 4 words not on any card, with highest distinction. "Walk." Nkechi stood. She walked to the stage. She climbed the 4 stairs. She crossed the platform in 11 steps, and those 11 steps were not the 11 steps of a woman who had been humiliated in front of 2,200 people and recovered. They were the 11 steps of a woman who had always known where she was going and had simply been waiting for the floor to be cleared. Dr. Yeboah Mensah held out the diploma. When Nkechi reached for it, the dean took her hand in both of hers and held it for 2 full seconds before she let go. Nkechi turned to face the auditorium. In the seventh row of the family section, a 7-year-old named Simone had climbed onto her seat so she could see over the heads of the adults in front of her. She was not clapping yet. She was watching her mother's face with the full attention of a child who is storing something. Then she started clapping, both hands completely open, as hard as she could. Adeze Okafor did not lower the Sony Cybershot until the diploma was in her granddaughter's hand. She had been holding the camera at eye level when the officers walked in at 10:22, and she had kept it there through the entire 11 minutes. The reach, the program held up, the dean's hands on the podium, the enrollment verification paper crossing the stage, the officers walking out. All of it. In a camera from 2011 with a rubber band holding the battery cover shut. She lowered it only when Nkechi turned to face the gallery. And then she pressed her face into Simone's hair and held it there. The Carrington University Police Department issued a formal statement 4 days later acknowledging that Officer Hollis had entered the auditorium on the basis of an insufficiently verified warrant match and had approached a graduating student who bore no legal connection to the individual named in the warrant. The statement confirmed that no action would be taken against the student and announced a new verification protocol requiring photographic confirmation before any approach of a warrant subject in a public academic setting. The first session of officer training under the new protocol was scheduled 2 weeks after that statement. It was held in a conference room on the Carrington campus, 40 meters from the side doors of Whitmore Auditorium. Nkechi Pauline Okafor received the department's direct apology on a Tuesday evening while she was on her night shift at Meridian Office Park, pushing a cleaning cart down the third-floor hallway at 11:15 p.m. She listened to the formal language of the apology on the phone. She said she appreciated it. She said thank you. Then she hung up and unlocked the next office door and began, in the specific unhurried rhythm she had developed over 11 years, to clean. Dr. Constance Yaboa Mensah declined to make a press statement. She sent one email to the university communications office. The ceremony proceeded as scheduled. Nkechi Okafor graduated with distinction. That is the whole story. The communications office forwarded it verbatim. It was the right statement. It contained every word that needed to be said, and none that didn't. Nkechi has not left Meridian Office Park. She is on the night shift 3 nights a week now instead of 5, because she was accepted to the MSW program at Carrington University's Graduate School of Social Work in March. A partial assistantship covers $9,000 of the $14,800 annual tuition, and she is working out the difference the way she has always worked out the difference, by knowing exactly what the number is and covering the distance with her own hands. The diploma from graduation day is on the wall of the apartment on Delmar Street she shares with Simone and Adeze, who moved up from Raleigh in September because, as Adeze explained to the cousin, who called to ask why she had moved, there was no reason to be anywhere else. What they tried to do to Nkechi Okafor that morning was reach into a ceremony she had earned with 7 years and 2 jobs and a laptop that ran out of battery and a gown she paid $35 to rent, and a child who ate breakfast every single morning, and remove her from it on the basis of a description so approximate that it described 36 other women in that room. They did not see a student. They did not see the dental floss handle or the longhand exam or the iron moving across the burgundy fabric at 11:30 at night. They saw a surface. They acted on the surface. That is the oldest mistake in the world, and it never stops being made. But there was a woman at a podium who had spent 35 years learning the difference between a surface and a person, and she had a microphone. And she knew that what a microphone in the right hands at the right moment can do is not amplify a voice. It is clarify whose room it is. There are people who have been that woman for you, not always on a stage, not always with a microphone. Sometimes in a break room, in a hallway, at a table, in a meeting where someone was talking around you, and one person looked up and said, simply, your name, who saw what was happening and did not perform the intervention, did not call attention to their own role in it, did not require acknowledgement afterward, who just did the thing that needed doing and went back to their work. And there are things you are building that no one has asked to see. Years assembled without ceremony, on shifts that end at 3 a.m. and start again at 6:00, on borrowed time and dental floss repairs and the specific stubbornness of a person who decided a long time ago that the work asks what it asks and you answer. Things that cannot be seized by someone whose warrant doesn't even have your name on it. You cannot arrest a credential. You cannot remove from a room the thing a person has become. Nkechi walked across that stage. The diploma went into her hand. In the 7th row, her daughter was standing on her seat to see. The room had always known whose name was in the program. The only question was who was going to stand at the microphone and read it out loud. If someone has ever tried to remove you from a room that was yours, a job, a table, a ceremony, a seat you had earned, leave your answer in the comments. What happened? And was there someone who said something? Subscribe for more stories about hidden strength, quiet power, and the people this world overlooks until they change everything. I'll see you in the next one.